This is going to be a really great topic because it's all going to be about energy efficiency, really, and increasing your income on your multifamily and commercial properties. We're going to dive in with Joseph Friend.
Through submetering, that's a process of will install submeters into each one of your units. Through submetering, we're going to tell them you could either rent down the block, $750, $800, all utilities included. Or what you could do is you could rent from us, $750, $725. You're paying utilities, but you're in control of your utilities. You have a meter on there, you turn off your water, you're not going to pay too much.
Welcome to the Investor Financing Podcast, where we interview real estate investors and lenders so you can learn all the secrets to getting your projects funded and scale your portfolio. And now, your host, Bo Eckstein.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Investor Financing Podcast. And I'm your host, Bo Eckstein. And today we have a special guest. And I'm always trying to bring value to you guys that are watching and listening to this. And this is going to be a really great topic because it's all going to be about energy efficiency, really, and increasing your income on your multifamily and commercial properties. We're going to dive in with Joseph Friend. He's the president and founder of Synergy Utility Billing LLC. Joseph is the president and senior utility consultant with a history of providing utility billing services and solutions that make water, gas, and electric allocation and cost recovery easy for property owners and managers. So this is going to be a really awesome discussion. Thank you for joining us, Joseph. Joseph's in New Jersey, and that's where my family's from. So before we went live, I was remembering the good old days, and I still have some family actually in Point Pleasant Beach. So whenever I can get out there, I do like to go to the Jersey Shore. So Joseph, thanks for joining us. I guess let's dive in and talk about, I was looking at your website and you offer a lot of services in the utility sector, utility submetering, RUBS, which is ratio utility billing, submeter installation, utility billing collection, utility analytics, utility consulting and system design. Most of our people that are listening and watching, they're really interested in, okay, how do I optimize the performance of my building? How do I increase rents and lower expenses? And I think you're the perfect person for this subject today because this, as we were mentioning earlier, this often gets overlooked. Can you kind of just talk to us about what RUBS is and what utility submetering is all about?
Yes, and thank you for having me on today. And we're always here at Synergy. We believe in education, and educating landlords and managers that's the number one goal before actually submetering or rolling out a submetering solution. We have to understand our objective. And when it comes to utilities, if we could just sort of define our space or submetering space in the market, a lot of stuff out there about deregulation, saving energy costs, which is all great. Conservation, tremendous. All these things, going green. Submetering is related to that. I would say it's a cousin of that, but it's not directly in that same space. Conservation, saving costs, deregulation, getting cheaper utility costs, especially when it comes to electric and water, that's on the top end. After you did all of that, you brought your bill down from $100,000 a month to $80,000. You did all the conservation methods, low flow toilets, got the best rates you could get on your electric. You're still left with the $80,000 liability. And as I mentioned earlier, before we got on air, this is a point which gets overlooked. Recovering utilities gets overlooked by a lot of investors and a lot of managers. Frankly, it's one line item on the pro forma. Utilities sometimes are not understanding what it is, and it could, if it gets overlooked, it could be a tremendous expense. And if it's not overlooked, we have a lot of ways how you're able to increase your NOI, and that's really what the point of all this is. Does that give you just a pretty good background of what we're
Yeah,
trying to do over here?
very good, very good. So a lot of my clients, because I'm in the lending space, right? They're doing these value add properties. They're buying let's say 100-unit multifamily property. And so can you walk me through, it's a value add type property. It was built in the 70s, let's say, for this hypothetical model. They're looking at the pro forma, the as is, and they're seeing that there's like high utility expenses. How do they engage? What do they do? Do they just simply make a call? Are you able to do like an analysis remotely? How does that look?
Yeah, so let's start. I guess that's actually even a better place to start than actual how Submeter works. The first thing is, in typical 90% of our clients will call us up. They'll give us a call, send us an email, exactly like you're saying. I'm looking to buy this building, or I recently purchased a building. Everything I thought was going fine, and now I'm stuck with this tremendous utility expense. I'm looking to see if there's a way I can minimize this expense. I heard about submetering these days. People have heard about it 10 years ago. RUBS, people didn't know what that was. Now RUBS is fairly common in the utility, in the real estate industry. And they say, we're looking to allocate it, get the money back. What's the best way to do it? How do we do that? How do we roll it out? That's usually they'll come not to educate a lot of them. Some they're more educated than others. Some know what they want. Some don't know what they want. They know, is it legal? Is it common practice? Is this something I should be doing? Is this something that, I can make money on? All different types of questions they'll ask us. The first thing that we would do is we'd take a look at them and say, what is your utility expense monthly? Whether it's $50,000, 100-unit building might only be $25,000, whether they have $100,000, whatever it may be. They'll give us those numbers, and really we would go through a set of questions. We'd start really consulting with them. What is the best way to roll it out and to maximize your recovery? And I guess really getting back to, it really goes hand in hand with increasing your NOI. Our goal is, and I'll tell them right away, our goal is to maximize your return on the utilities, and without chasing your tenants out. Because I don't care how great of a utility billing company you are, if what we're doing is chasing your tenants out and they're leaving, you're left with a bigger problem. Your tenants and having the occupied building month after month, that's your bread and butter. If we're able to recover utility expenses on top of that, then we're all winners. But if we're recovering utility expenses at the expense of, no pun intended, expense of chasing out your tenants, we all failed. And as a billing company, we failed. And that's what's something that a lot of companies, without promoting Synergy too much over here, but just to understand the value of a company like Synergy, a lot of companies, you'll call them up and all they're interested in is seeing how many bills can we send out this month without actually making sure that it's a payable expense. When I say payable expense, so let's go back. You have $100,000 bill a month. Let's just say, for argument's sake, you have a 100-unit property. They say, I'm bleeding over here $100,000 a month. I need to recover this. Do me a favor, Joseph. I heard you're a billing company. Are we able to allocate that $100,000 bill between our 100 tenants? No big deal. You put on there, easy job, $1,000 on each invoice. Send out water invoice. We have it in the leases. They're responsible for utilities. Charge them $1,000 each month. And I'll tell them that we will not take on a job like that, because someone's going to get a $1,000 bill, even if it's a penthouse apartments, beautiful upscale apartments. No one's paying a $1,000 water bill. So Synergy made their money. We'll charge you X amounts for each bill we send out, but you're not going to recover bills. You're going to have upset tenants. No one's going to pay it. That's not called a billable expense. What I'll come back over to them and I'll say, you have an issue over here. 100-unit building shouldn't be charged. It shouldn't be a $1,000 water bill. That's not what it should be over here. The water bill should only be something more, let's just say $50 a unit. Let's figure out, let's get some guys in there, figure out there must be some leaks over here. B, let's bring it down to a more realistic number. let's say that's not $100,000 that bill, but it would have came out to $150 per each tenant. Let's charge them max. Max, just theorizing, max, we're not charging them more than $75, $80 for water. At least you're going to get back over here. You're going to be 50% of that liability you'll recover. Ultimately, the numbers should add up. And if your property is in good shape, we should be able to cover the whole thing. So let's get into more of a normal scenario over here. Your water bill on average is coming out indeed to $100, $50, $100 a month. Let's figure out how can we recover that on top of the rents. One question is investors will say, let me just bump up the rents. Include in the rents, why do I need third party? This is too complicated for me. I'm charging $750 for the rent. I'm going to charge $850. The several problems with that. Number one, utilities is your largest or some of your largest non-fixed expenses that you have each month. So you can't recover a non-fixed expense, we all know, with a fixed increase. So you're going to increase $100, try to cover your rent. Number one, if you'll have a water increase, if there's a water leak, whatever may be going on, people are just like using water endlessly. Your water bill could very well be $150 per unit this coming month, and you're only recovering $100 per unit. So that's, basics. You can't, non-fixed expense is not, you can't recover that with a fixed expense. There's also the perception that people looking at that, they look at their rents. Why am I paying $850 for the rent if my neighbor down the block is only paying $750? When we charge a separate, number one, they look at that. They say, okay, I'm paying $750 plus utilities. And this is the key over here of not only charging utilities, but turning utilities, what we like to call into amenity. What does that mean, turning utilities into amenity? Nobody likes to pay utility. I don't like paying my utility bill. You don't like paying your utility bill. So going back to just back up a little bit, the way we turn into amenity is we're going to look at during the consultation, we're going to ask the landlord, are people in your area, are they charging utilities? If it's saying no, nobody's charging utilities, $750 is the rents, utilities included, all utilities included, they're in a tough position then. They don't really give themselves leeway. But if people are charging utilities or the rents are higher and we're able to tell them, let's lower your rents. Yeah. And what we're going to do is rather than charging $850, we're going to lower $750 or even $725. And we're going to tell them that you guys are now in control of your utility expense through submetering, which is that's a process of we'll install submeters into each one of your units. Through submetering, we're going to tell them you could either rent down the block, $750, $800, all utilities included. Or what you could do is you could rent from us, $750, $725. You're paying utilities, but you're in control of your utilities. You have a meter on there. You turn off your water, you're not going to pay too much. You want to let your water run the whole day. You want to invite your friends over. You have college kids, you're renting it out. Airbnb, whatever you want to do, you're going to pay for that water. But if you don't want to pay for that water, you're a snowbird, you're not there, you're going to be saving money every single winter, every single weekend. You're away at work. You don't use a lot of water, you're going to save money. So that's what it actually not only does. Are you increasing your NOI? You're recovering it because now you're recovering it by actually charging dollar for dollar. If water is used, you're getting that back. B, you're actually turning into amenity where people like that. They say, I'm paying for utilities used. I'm not paying for utilities not used. And if you're an investor, you want to flip that property in a few years, it's a great selling point. Even if you don't have submeters installed, investors, submeters usually cost about $300 purchase installed. Is a great add-on value when you want to sell that and you say this is submetered. Everything utilities are paid by the renters. You show them on your performer. You show here was a utility expense, which $100,000. Here's we recovered. I don't know if it's $100,000, but $95,000. Or some places, some cities, you can actually have a markup charging them the residential rate. Here's money we made on utilities. And that's a great value for the tenants, great value for investors. and obviously a great value for the environment.
So to kind of unpack this a little bit, that when you're looking at this 100-unit apartment complex, you're going to look at it from either a RUBS standpoint or a submeter installation. Okay.
Correct.
And you're going to say, does it make sense to do a submeter installation? And the reason it wouldn't make sense sometimes is maybe the building's super old and it's going to cost a lot of money to do.
Exactly.
And then
maybe logistically we can't set it up. They don't have a shut off into each unit. They have numerous lines, a lot of buildings, multiple risers, in multiple units feeding off individual risers.
And did you say that typically, usually, I mean, it probably depends on markets and areas and different things, but it's around $300 per unit for installation?
Of a water meter.
Of a water
Correct.
meter.
That's that meter AMR system. That's automatic meter reading system, which sends the reads out remotely, electronically, so you don't have to enter units. We're getting daily reads, live leak reports, and all that. I would say $300 to $300 is a good starting point.
And if you did the submeter, the advantage is that they're paying for what they exactly use,
and they like that.
Versus RUBS, and we're kind of diving into RUBS. RUBS would be kind of generalized in a sense by industry standard, based on the square footage and bedroom bathroom count, and everybody would pay that percentage allocation, which is also very useful for increasing NOI. But in theory, submetering is the way to go if you can. From a cost standpoint and a strategic standpoint, that's really the ideal situation. But for the kind of quicker fix, RUBS is probably for a quick value add. Somebody who's going to be flipping the building might not be as concerned. They're just looking to get it off and divert that payment to the tenant. And I'm curious, with your experience, how do you see the landlords handling all of a sudden they're charging $750 a unit, and now, hey, you got to pay your utilities? I mean, that might get some vacancies quickly, like you were saying earlier. So is there kind of like rules of thumb that you've seen where you strategically, raise it up over a time period where then they're actually paying that percentage? Like maybe the allocation's $100 per unit that they should be paying, but if you hit them right away, you might go from 95% occupancy down to 80% because people get pissed off. Exactly. How do you strategically do that? And then my other strategic question is, when you're doing these analysis, Joseph, on the submetering, you're going to say, okay, it's a 100-unit building. It's going to cost X amount of dollars to install all these submeters and get everything permitted, whatever you have to do. And then I'm sure you have some kind of, formula or analysis that you can say, okay, it's going to take 3 years essentially to recover all the expenses, the expense of installing, the cost to recover that, right? Do you break that down for the owner or the landlord? Yeah,
we definitely break that down. And really, that number, let's go back to the first point. We spoke about implement rolling it out. Get back to the second point. To the first point, as far as rolling it out, great question. What we find that people do is really different ways, and it really depends how aggressive the landlord is. The number one rule of thumb, obviously it needs to be in the lease. Once it's in the lease, either they could take it or they could leave it, like you say. So it depends really on the market and how aggressive it is. In high demand markets, really, we don't find people that concerned about it because they know that someone's going to leave, they're going to fill it right back up. So they'd rather have a tenant paying utilities than a tenant not paying utilities. Where it's more of a delicate market, then we find a lot of times people will phase it in with new move-ins. So we could do it like that. So rather than hitting everyone at one time, any new leases, and we have properties where literally they'll take them 3 years to turn it over, or by lease renewals, so it'll take them 12 months. But we do find a lot of education is the key. And people understand that, no one's in denial. You need to pay for water. No one likes it. They realize that landlords are not just trying to nickel and dime them. They're actually trying to just recover the utility costs. What we do find is education works. It works tremendously, and even explain to them that, you're going to be saving money even though you're paying utilities. If you take this seriously and you conserve water, you're going to be saving money month after month. We find that, and just a rule of thumb that I'm not in the management sector, so I can't tell you for sure, but I don't think people like getting hit twice. So when they roll it out, here's your bill, this is what's going to be. They don't want to say, okay, I'm paying $30 this month, next month $45, next month $65. Just want to get it done with. It's like a bad medicine, and they'll complain about it a little bit, and but with good education, everyone's on board, and they realize that the charges are legitimized, that's extremely important. The education, and the manager should explain that to them. It really rolls out extremely well. As far as ROI on the investment, if you're doing RUBS, there is no investment. There's no equipment to install, it's just allocation, basically sophisticated way or a better way of allocating your master utility bills. So that's a no-brainer. Like you did say, I always tell people it's not good for me to say this, but I'd rather get people doing RUBS right away and we have money in our pocket tomorrow. Submetering is definitely more of a process, but submetering is the way to go. As far as ROI on that, these meters last solidly 10 to 15 years. I'd say solid 10 years before they need replacing. Take a $300 meter, you're looking at $30 a year. $30 a year. We're not looking at, tremendous expense. Having said that, it depends. If you're not charging utilities until now, and now you install some meters, you can start charging utilities. Hey, go do the math yourself. $300 a pop. You charge $50 utility bill, you're now recovering. That's 6 months. You got your money back. Even the worst case scenario, 12 months, 18 months. Obviously, if you were charging utilities until now, you're not going to see that increase as quickly, but it's still a great add-on, a great investment. One thing I would say, one practice that, I think I'd be remiss not to mention to investors who are looking and shopping around for utility billing companies, that sometimes they'll say, boy, 300, that doesn't sound like a lot, but times 100 units, that starts adding up. So what you will have companies do is actually they'll lock you in for a long-term contract. They'll say, we'll give you the equipment for free, or we'll give you $100 a shot. But you sign a 10-year billing agreement, 5-year, 10-year billing agreement with us, and you'll slowly pay back over many, many years. That sounds nice up front. The problem with that is that utility billing, as besides for billing, we said before, is more a service than actually billing. And if someone doesn't know what they're doing, or someone's billing company is not billing properly, underbilling, not responsive to complaints, or not responsive to issues, adjustments, you're stuck in a really bad contract just to save some money up front. And if you run the dollars and cents where they're charging you higher billing prices over 10 years, you're actually paying them more money for the meters. If you need financing, hey, we go to you, right? You'll be the one, you'll give them financing.
That's right.
Add that on, go to your bank. They'll be able to give you financing, but dollars for dollars, it's not a good deal for the investors. You're locked in for a bad service. And we see this all the time, and people just, they're looking at that bottom line. They're looking at what am I paying today? But the analogy is, you just need someone to, do your carpets, replace your carpets. And the next thing they say, well, we'll replace your carpets for free. But if you need a secretary, we'll be working with secretary next 10 years. It's two separate things. You have the equipment, get good equipment, pay for that up front. Take out some financing on that. It's a great return on that financing, and hire the best customer service company you could find.
So the provider of water, or the utility, essentially stays the same. And then if they got engaged with your company, essentially you handle the submetering billing. Is that accurate?
Exactly. We are not a utility biller provider. Whatever relationship the utility we're not a utility provider. Whatever relationship the landlord had with the utility provider, They continue to have, we look at ourselves, we're outsourced billing arm between the landlord and the tenants.
And so the landlord doesn't have to get involved really. They just pay for the installation, and then everybody has
installation.
The tenants are all getting their bills essentially. Now, if it's not written on the language, you're going to have to wait until either a lease renewal or the tenant moves out essentially, because you can't just say, we're implementing RUBS or we're putting submeters on, now you have to pay. I mean, because it's not written in a lease typically, unless it is that they have the right to, right? They would have to wait to the, okay.
You can do addendum, we find 60-day notices, and, they're able to do a addendum to the lease.
Okay. And so we got that submetering. Can you also submeter not only water, but gas and electric as well?
Exactly. So that's the three main utilities would be water, gas, and electric. It all works, the same idea. You put an inline meter on that intake line into that unit, or on the CT, it has to be electric, or the gas line entering that unit. And we like to get a full capture. There's other methods if you don't have full capture, runtime devices you have, heat cost allocation. We don't like doing that. It's complicated. We do it if need be, but our go-to plan is to simple. You get a meter on. This is how many CCS of gas you use, how many kilowatts of electric you used. They can read the meter. It matches exactly what they're getting on their bill, and they know this is what I use. Very simple to understand. We like keeping things simple, makes it better for all.
Okay, so I have a client right now. He's buying first off, do you cover the U.S. or do you just have certain geographic locations?
Yeah, we're nationwide. Great question. We're based out of New Jersey, but we service properties coast to coast, north to south, Texas, California, Michigan, all over the place. I think we're operating in about 25 states currently. We have right out there in Las Vegas. We do properties as well.
Good to know. So, kind of going to this question. So I got this gentleman. He's doing this value add property in Texas. That's 98 units. If he what does it take to have you take a look and say, okay, I mean, can you do a analysis remotely, quickly, and then at some point you probably have to do a tour and check all the, where the utilities tie in and do your thing on that form. But can you actually if we got you utility bills and different stuff like that, size up the deal and say, okay, this is probably what you're looking at, and give us a quick analysis so we know, okay, because he's acquiring the property, he's got to renovate. There's 10 more units that need to be remodeled right now, right? So we got $200,000 in the CapEx budget for that. But if I could just point them and say, hey, let's do this, because we're going to we'll be able to drop down expenses by 20% or whatever it is. Is that how does that process work? If I want to refer the client to you, and what does he need to provide you, so you can say, okay, this is how I'm going to show you the best ROI on this particular multifamily property.
Yeah. Yes. A great question. And yes, today's day and age, everything is being done remotely. Typically the first thing we would ask for utility bills, if they don't know what they're looking at. So they would send us those utility bills. They would tell us, how many tenants they have there. If they're just looking to an allocation, we'd be able to run those numbers. They'd be able to take a look. We could run if they have a rent roll. If they have square footage, we could run several different scenarios for them. See what those utility bills would look like. Show them what would be. Let's say they want to cap it at $25, wherever it may be. Probably not. They probably don't want to cap it. But what would make sense? They know their market better than we do. This is the market. This is what the market could sustain. This is what we're able, and we'd show them what we'd be able to do, different scenarios, what makes sense for them. Sometimes they say, okay, the lower rents, or we have no problem charging them a little bit more. We want to keep the higher rents down. We have different scenarios how to do that. I'm actually in Texas. They actually It's very nice in Texas. The PUC over there actually spells out extremely clearly how to allocate different allocation methods that we could dip into. As far as, I don't know if you were referring to this, but as far as, just getting them exact quote, what would it take, exact number to install the submeters? That's something, believe it or not, we do remotely as well. We have our own technicians who install submeters, and we like it that way because installing submeter is more sophisticated than installing a regular meter. A local plumber might not put it in properly, might not put in the advanced automatic meter reading system correctly, and therefore we actually will go down to the property, definitely at least for each installation one time, to coordinate together, to work hand in hand with your plumber, or to actually do the entire job. So guys always need quotes. That's that's quick. We're not coming down, to be honest with you. We're based out of New Jersey. We have techs strategically based throughout the company, but we're not able to be in every locale every single day. And most people can't. It's a specialty, and you want someone who knows what they're doing. But believe it or not, people don't realize it's very simple to get an exact quote. If it's a new construction, they'll send us the plumbing plans. We'll actually work with the builders, and to be able to get those meters installed before they close up the walls or before everything's finished up. If they just want a quote on a retrofit, typically you give us either plans, even less than that. We've been doing this installing for over 20 years. You give us a picture of that intake leading into the unit, the shut-off valve, the CT, how many units, description of the property. We usually are able to turn around a quote like that, an accurate quote, within 24 hours.
That's really good. See, I'm learning a lot. Now I have a better understanding. And do you also, in like deregulated energy states, do you also provide quotes for different providers? Because is that part of the services you do as well?
So we like to call that, and the big box store utility billing companies, they always say, we offer submeter billing, deregulated energy, and utility energy management, which is great, and Synergy offers all those things as well. But just they should be educated. I think it's understood that's a separate market. As far as submetering, we don't care how much your utility is costing. Our job is to recover whatever you paid. Mm-hmm. But having said that, yes, we do offer that as well. We have within our organization, we're able to give you a different price quotes on deregulated and getting you more competitive energy, that's great. That's what we said earlier. Let's start at the top. Cut your costs off the top. You don't have to worry about recovering it.
Yeah. So I guess the point is there's so many options, right? You can. So really, you're doing kind of a full gamut of energy savings, really. I mean, utility savings. All right. So I've kind of walked through that. Now, how do you determine if you're looking at financials and expenses on a property, and is there like an analysis just to see if there's huge leaks in this plumbing where it's just pouring water out and that's the problem, right? Their bill's $100,000 a month where it really should be 60. It's just, there's like some advanced leak detection. Is that also kind of an inspection that can be a huge savings that most people are overlooking as well?
Yeah. So Synergy, as far as actually coming down to the property, inspecting it, that's not really what our bread and butter is. We're here to give you the data and give you actionable data that you're actually able to move on. And we could tell you that something's wrong here. Go check for leaks. And we're able to see that off the top. Just number one, from our experience, average, how much energy should be used, how much water should be used on average per unit per month. And on top of that, we also have, typical benchmarking, Energy Star, portfolio manager, and all these other analytical tools, we're able to take your building, run the numbers. This is your type of building. It's a 98 unit multifamily located in Austin, Texas. This is what the water should be. This is what the energy should be. Weather normalized. This is what you should be costing compared to similar properties of your type. And this is what you are paying. So we could see that off the top, and I'm telling you have an issue over here. And that's something we offer additionally. You're speaking about different services as an ongoing service. Our energy management services, to keep on top of it and keep on top on the 30,000 view level, are able to see, are you competitive? Is there something going on here? Some things, we're able to take a look at that.
What I'm just curious, like, I don't know if there's even this out there, but how many multifamily properties are submetered versus that are, I think it's probably like a pretty untapped market where there's so many properties still that aren't utilizing the RUBS or aren't submetered. Does anybody have any kind of like general study in the US of like because this seems like there's so many people that need this service. That's what I'm just curious. And like, is it like 5% or 10% of all multifamily? Any idea on that?
I don't recall offhand. I do remember reading intense report on it last year. I actually think the number was higher. I think it might have been somewhere between 30 and 50% are actually doing some sort of billing back. And that number just keeps on growing and growing, especially with utility costs going up and regulators making rent increases harder. People are just scrambling to find other ways to increase rent. So that number is going up. And it's not only in multifamilies. This is, I don't know if people are investing in mobile home parks or buying HOAs or any of these types of things, student housing. There's just so many different markets for this.
So, even office condos, right? Everything could be
everything.
Even, everything could be looked at that. Even like industrial properties, right? With different tenants in there, right? Because they're not allocated. And so there's room to increase.
We do that. Yeah.
NOI. Pretty much. When does it not make sense to implement RUBS or submetering on a multifamily property? Is there ever a time where you feel like, okay, this isn't worth it for you?
Yeah. So what I would say is it's not worth it. I don't know if this is your investor and which type of investor you have. Small properties, which I would say it's as far as installation, you're gonna have a hard time. Something smaller than 30 units, something smaller than 50 units to install, just doesn't make sense to go out and install it. You're paying for overhead equipment. It's going to, like the data collector is going to bring your cost up. As far as our billing service, over the years, we sort of transited and we have like minimum pricing. We don't like offering watered down products. We don't think that the end user is getting a good value for that. So we have minimum costs if they're not fitting in our thresholds, if they're not a 50 unit property, we just have minimum fee. But what's not going to work, we find, is RUBS billing on anything smaller than a 10 unit property. You just don't have enough people in the pool. And therefore, if, we always tell people, they say they want to bill 6 units, they'll pay our minimum fee. I tell them it's not going to work because 6 units, you have in the summer, one guy, it's a property in Florida. So one guy's going up north for the summer. He's not there. And the next neighbor invites the whole family down to Florida for the summer. They're using the pool the whole day. Water is going nonstop. What's going to happen is everyone's bill, you only have 6 people to pick up that increase. 5 people are paying for everyone else's pool. Instead of the bill being $100, now $200. You're one guy who went up north saying, I wasn't even there for the month and you're charging me $200, $250. It just doesn't work. And then what they do, they start capping the bill and it's just a disaster. No one's happy. So that's what we find doesn't make sense. Obviously, our target property is 100 units or more. But anything less than 50 or anything less than on the RUBS, bare minimum, a 10 unit property, the small numbers just don't work. 50 units, you're in already a nice spot. 100 units, great. And, obviously the 100 to 500 units, that's really you're hitting your stride. That's what makes sense.
And typically out of all the utilities that you're able to meter, where do you see, I mean, when somebody comes to you, you can look at all different and say, okay, electric, it doesn't make sense, gas makes sense, and water, right? So that's, if they send you all the data, you can look at it and say, you put a whole plan together for them based upon what's going to make sense, what's not going to make sense. And then also on your services, utility analytics, is that kind of like a meter, like a sensor that, can you explain what that does exactly?
Yeah, so the utility analytics, that's a little bit where we're speaking about the energy management offerings, where it's not equipment, that's actually where we're comparing your data and taking the master utility bills, 24 months of that, and that's where we spoke about, we're going to compare it side to side with other properties in different markets, number one, for if it's deregulated, to get you to analyze, are you getting the best rate, to validate the data on the top end, where we'll validate each one of the utility bills. A lot of times there's billing errors on the master utility bill end. They're giving you the wrong rate. They're charging the wrong rate, flat out errors, flat out inconsistencies. We don't like any of those. So we'll audit the utility bill on the top end. As we said earlier, we'll normalize for weather. We'll normalize, what the cost should be. Benchmark it, Energy Star scoring. A lot of properties need that. And the best thing on top of that, we do quarterly reviews with you, quarterly conference calls to actually review what's going on, see if there's any changes on that. So that's more of a hands-on process. You will have a dashboard where we could see what's going on. And that's great. You're able to compare that to other buildings, and you can actually compare that to your submeter performance as well. So it could be everything was going great, submetering, you're getting back 100% in the winter. All of a sudden in the summer, we're dropping down to only 50% recovery. We quickly were able to take a snapshot of that and say, what's going on over here? Why in the summer, as my utilities, the difference between my master utility bills and my submeter bills, why is all of a sudden it's a 50% difference, where in the winter I was doing great? And that, again, we could advise you and give you actionable advice as to, that data, and they actually say, this is what you need to do, this is what's going on here. But we just had that someone with their gas costs went up this winter from last winter, and the managers are busy doing a lot of things, filling up the building, keeping the tenants happy. We pointed that out to them, and they realized, one of our boilers was down, and therefore we had to, fire up the other boiler extra high, and that's what's costing us over here. They put that on their to-do list. We better get that boiler fixed to bring our gas costs back down.
Very good. Well, we could keep going forever. I think
yes,
we nailed a lot of good information today. Yes. I learned a lot. Now I think I can talk a little bit better. And everybody that was listening, if you would like to find out more information about Joseph and his company, you can visit synergyutilitybilling.com. Joseph, any closing remarks that you want to leave us with?
No, it's a great time to explore, even if you don't, to explore submetering, even if you think you don't need it. Like we said it earlier, it's something that gets overlooked. And if you're always running that, you have a meeting coming up, just trying to increase your costs, we're always here to educate you and to work with you and, see what we could do from the utility billing aspect to increase your NOI. And it's an exciting market, a lot of change, a lot of great technology out there these days with everything with the cloud computing, and it's easier than ever to implement this. And maybe something that 5 years ago you went through this, you said it wasn't, the time wasn't right then. It's getting cheaper and more effective and more common. And, just a great time for the submetering market. And, if I could just pitch myself for a second, give those other vendors, you always have those big blockbuster vendors out there. Give the other vendors a chance, give them a look, and you'll be happy. You'll get a lot better customer service than what the regular market is giving you. So thank you for taking the time to interview me and giving me this opportunity. And
Thank you.
Anything else, we'll always be happy to. You have my contact information, and feel free to reach out to me anything when the need comes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Investor Financing Podcast. For show notes and useful resources, please visit investorfinancingpodcast.com. For questions or comments, email info@investorfinancingpodcast.com. If you enjoy our show, please share it with your network. Until next time.